Hi there. We encounter sound every day, and yet we rarely think about its power to heal, to transform, and even change the things that we create. Today's guest is Geoff Lamden. He is what I would call a sound pioneer, and he has really dedicated his life to sound. First, as a musician, where he has toured all around the US in hundreds of bands and leading musicians, to currently as a business owner, brewing kombucha with a vibrational frequency, right? And in between all of that, he did some pretty amazing sound healing. So today we really dive in to some interesting topics. The intersection of music, healing, leadership, authenticity, and Geoff brings a really cool perspective. I know you're going to love this conversation, so enjoy. This is the Charging Up Leadership Podcast, and I am your host, Heidi Fry. This podcast is all about energizing you from the inside out, inspiring you to plug in, light up, and just be the best version of yourself in how you live and lead. Hey, Geoff, welcome to the show.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I'm very excited to have this conversation because although I've known you for years, I don't know you. I've encountered you, in a number of ways. And the last time that we had seen each other, I was just so impressed by some of the things you were talking about, specifically as a leader and a business owner, and tying it into the music. I knew I had to have you on the podcast. So welcome again.
Thank you. Yeah, and the last time we saw each other was a beautiful moment that was shared with sound, as many of the moments in my life are with other people.
Yes. So I almost want to start. Do you think you can give me a couple bullet points about, let's just lay the foundation of your career
Sure.
from, early musician? Because when I read that in your bio that you've toured the country and hundreds of bands, I'm like, how do you do that? So if you can just give us some bullet points, then we'll dive into the deep stuff.
Yeah. So started playing music when I was in 8th grade, started off as a singer. When I got into high school, it became a bass player because no one was playing the bass. And I remember when I got home, first moment with my bass, I felt like I discovered a whole new world that was just especially for me. And I started playing music about 6 months after I got a bass. I started playing gigs. My first 2 years, I couldn't face the audience. I was too scared. And one time I looked at the audience members and they were shaking their heads like, yeah. I looked at the one next to him and like, yeah. And ever since then, I've never turned back, and I'm all out there, spreading love with sound and vibration. And so when I was 17, I was sitting in my room and this voice said to me, like, you'll be a sound healer. And, I'm a 17-year-old kid growing up in suburban West Michigan. I'm like, whatever that is, sure. And over the course of years, I noticed that I would always be talking about sound in a different way than other people. I'd always be like, oh, well, that sound resonates with this. Or like, oh, if you make that sound with your body, it helps open up this area for emotions and such. So I got my first singing bowl. I started working with tuning forks, and I desired to put people on a massage table and play sound directly on them after years of before that, I was touring the country with bands. When you ask, like, how does one tour the country with bands and join over 100 bands? You just say yes to everything. And like, you're in a lot of bands that you have no interest in, but you learn a lot from that band. And one of the main things that I learned from playing music for people and playing music with people is what I call vibratory response, which is really how I like to work with my sound and how I like to work with my leadership in general. I send a vibe out and I see how the person responds. So you could play or sing the same note, and two people might go, shoulders dropping, and two other people might go, oh my gosh, it's like horrendous. So I started realizing that there was no right or wrong way. There's just different ways we respond to sound. And so just like in regular therapy, sometimes your therapist will ask you a question and you just start crying. And other times they'll ask you a question and you're like, that's no big deal. So I started doing that with sound, and and I love the one-on-one response. It took me from the whole like big group setting of a bar or a theater or a festival and made it real personable. Then I started stepping out into yoga studios and doing smaller groups with it. And then at my house, I had all my singing bowls and tuning forks and all my instruments. And I noticed that all the kombucha that was vibrating on one shelf was tasting and looking completely different than the kombucha that was on the other shelf.
No
And
way.
yeah, and
No
I
way.
started. So and then there's a man named Dr. Emoto who shows what water molecules look like depending on what you say to them or what music you play to them. And I was like, all right, here. And so I go back and forth with like looking into the science of it and then just looking into my own intuitive practice and the science. And so when I, talk about authenticity and like sustainability of the self, it's like if I'm being my true self, then I'm creating a vibratory pattern that is my authentic self. And then I see who vibes with it and who doesn't. And I find I find listening is the main thing that gets left out of today's world. Everyone's about action, action, action. And if you have never been to a river before and you just run up and jump off a cliff into the river and you have no idea how fast it moves or what depth it is or anything like that, you're taking a massive risk. And I think a lot of people just start taking action right away instead of, sussing the situation and seeing like, here's a good swimming hole. This will work for this here. This will act like this here. And so that's what Sacred Springs, my sound infused kombucha business, is based off of, is all the years of learning how to listen instead of just making music, listening to sound versus constantly creating it so that the sound I create has more intention.
Wow. That
Yeah,
was
that
a
was a
lot.
lot.
That was a lot. Like, oh, like where do I even begin? I guess let's start with seriously, I'm at a blank here because there's so much that I want to choose from. So let's start from one of the last lines in your bio. You wrote, or it's written, let's see. His focus is authenticity of self and offers a place where employees, clients, and customers are encouraged to know themselves and take action from this place of feeling and knowing. So this is a statement I would probably want to save to the end of the podcast, but it really lays the foundation of everything you're about and everything you do. And so I want to start there. What was the defining moment in your journey? So out of everything you just laid out, what was the defining moment that made you say, "Oh, authenticity, who I am as a person"? I mean, you just gave us a rundown, but tell us a little bit more about the moment.
Yeah, that dialing in.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
it, it really it came from being on tours with a band where we would go to Colorado every winter and play at the ski resorts. And
Mhm.
so all of a sudden you're in front of all these people who you've never met. So there's a huge difference between playing music in your local hometown for the same people over and over and over again. You've got a relationship with them, they have a relationship with the songs, and all of a sudden I'm out there like these people have no idea who I am. I have no idea who they are. They have no idea what songs we're going to play. And so I started going out into the audience during set breaks and being like, hey, I'm Geoff. Who are you? What's your story? How'd you end up here? What kind of music do you like? What would you like to hear? And then I would come back and the band would kind of be like, man, how do we get these people moving? And I go, play this song. And they'd be like, that song, that doesn't make any sense right now. And then we'd play it and like the whole dance floor would fill up, or all of a sudden like a bunch of people would be cheersing, or like someone all of a sudden would be dancing with their love partner and crying on the dance floor because it was like the song that meant so much to them. And my bandmates would look at me like, how'd you know that? And I was like, well, I went out and like asked. I went out and listened to what they had to say instead of being like, I've got the amplifier, I've got the noisemaker, they're going to hear what I have to say. It was more like, what would they like to hear? And then how do I say that authentically instead of just trying to make them happy, but like, how do I express myself in a way that's been asked for? And that's where that word vibratory response, came from. So that's a key moment. I'd also have to go into the world of kombucha making at home, where I saw that the fermentation would grow differently when it was being vibrated by the sounds I was making versus the stuff that wasn't vibrating. And I was like, there is something to this. and I would just sit there and just, you know, and as you know me, I would just ask the kombucha, like, what's up? You know, what's going on? Just like a farmer might go out to the garden and see, you know, what nutrients are needed, or, you know, I would just like, what kind of sounds help perk you up or help like slow you down or help balance you out.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, just as you described the dance scene when you're a musician, can you give us some examples of when you were in sound healing, some examples of some, some big wins with your clients?
Yeah. So once again, anytime you start something new, your nerves are going to be there. So I'm like, okay, I have to really get me trying to prove myself out of the way and just like know that what I'm doing has something to offer. It's my true self and see what happens. And what I noticed is when I would put a tuning fork at a specific place on someone, all of a sudden their hand would like jump, like their fingers would jump, or all of a sudden like their whole body. And it was, so I started reading the nervous system, like, okay, when this place has vibration of this sort applied here, and we're working with harmonies, we're working with dissonance or consonance. So like if there's something where something needs to be broken up and I put a little dissonance there, all of a sudden they're like, oh, thank goodness that released. Or maybe there's an area where there's a little bit of like shattered energy and it needs to be, glued and melded together. And I put something that's more harmonically consonant there. And all of a sudden I see like a deep belly breath, or their shoulders drop, or like a real easy one in the world of this is watching eyebrows and eyelashes and eyelids. Because when someone's emotionally responding to something, they'll start to flutter. And so if I see eyelashes, eyelids, eyebrows fluttering, I know whatever's going on here is helpful. It's not my job to know what's going on. It's not my job to say, when I put a tuning fork on your index finger of your left hand, I noticed that your cheek would start to twitch. What's going on there? Because if I start doing that, all this logic, everything moves up to the head versus, just how the body's responding. So I would use different sounds and watch the body respond in slight micro motions. It's really how, and it, no one told me about that. I've read books all about it now, but at the time I was just like, I love this person on the table. I love sound. Let's see what happens,
Well, and I will speak from an experience. I don't know if you recall one of the first times that, like I said, I had met you at a fair, and I met you at the health food store. So I've met you, right?
Yep.
We were in a Kundalini yoga class. I don't know if you recall, but we were in a Kundalini yoga class. You were to my left, and we were going through Shavasana, right? Which is when, after your yoga practice, you rest for probably 5 minutes, and the instructor was playing the gong, right? So it was just this beautiful experience. I had a lot going on, and I was like buzzing. My head was on overdrive. And when we got up, we were rolling up our mats and saying goodbye. You looked at me, you said, I don't know, these weren't your exact words, but it was like, girl, you need to stop thinking. You need to get out of your head. And I was like, what? I was I was floored that you knew that you said something about it. That's how confident you were about what you were feeling. And also the fact that you were right. So yeah, so I knew then that you had a really special gift, an intuition, a connection of, that this energy feeling was a part of you, even if you didn't walk around talking about it. It was you, or it is you, right? So when you talk
Yeah.
about, like, I talked to the kombucha, I get it. You were feeling
Yep.
it. You were
Yep.
feeling it for
Well, I
sure.
put my ear up to it and listen to the bubbling, and I mean, like, there's just like anyone who's doing their thing, like, you're in the zone. And I hope when I talk to you, I was in a world of respect versus like you got, like more
No,
like
you
it was
were.
coming with some love of like, hey, it's gonna be helpful for this, you know what I mean? And one of the reasons I can know that is because I like to live up here.
Mhm.
I don't know if I like to, but I do live up in this.
Who doesn't? We're human, right?
Yep.
Well, and it's interesting too, because what you mentioned a minute ago was how you had to put the nerves away and so that you could actually tune into the sound as a sound healer. And I immediately thought of ego. And then I use that word lovingly with my clients because oftentimes we don't even listen to ourselves because we are so wrapped up in what others are going to say and what our ego is saying to us. And it is very challenging to be your true authentic self.
Yeah, I think for me, a huge thing is getting comfortable in the silence. Like don't always go in being like, this sound's gonna do this and this, and like once the silence hits and in the experience of working with another person one-on-one, once we're breathing together, like once you notice like, okay, I can hear your breath, I can breathe with you. And so I really work with the word entrainment, which is where something that's vibrating near the same vibrational pattern, they'll start to click together. So you put three tick-tock clocks in a room, and within 5 minutes, they're all going to be tick-tock, like right in unison with each other. So,
No,
so yes, yep,
really.
yep. And so it's the words entrainment. It also, the experience can be done with something like if I am at an orchestra and everyone's tuning to an A note, if one of the drums, one of the timpanis is tuned to an A note, all of a sudden it'll just start making its sound, or all of a sudden one of the harp strings that's an A note will start resonating too. So this word entrainment, happens vibrationally, but also happens energetically in the same way that like if, in the world of leaders, if there's someone in the room who is a great leader with specifically the project that's at hand, everyone, if they don't fight it, they'll naturally start like turning to like, what is this person's input? And everyone's going to have their own personal input along with it. But it's like, it's obvious like this person knows the most and has the most passion about what we're doing here. And it's that person's job not to force themselves on another person, but to be in their power. And so, I have played in hundreds of bands. I would do things like we're all going to eat the same meal with our hands. We're all going to reach into this. I go out for Ethiopian food. We're all going to eat with our hands. Okay, we're all going to, take this bottle of water and put it into 4 cups, and we're all going to drink the same water right now. Or we're all going to, instead of, like having a big speech before the gig, we're all going to just like take 3 breaths together. And so, you get in the world of yoga studios, people are like talking about the breath all the time, but what's it like to take it into the business world? What's it like to just acknowledge that when people are in tune with each other, that they feel safer, and when they feel safer, their brain is more available. Like they're not stuck in the cortex. They're not stuck in fight or flight. Like
Right.
I feel safe here. I know this person's like ego is big, but I feel like what I have to offer is really important. And like they're letting me sit in silence right now. I'm just gonna say what I think, and and it's also the leader's position then to know if something's said that's really beautiful, to give credit to that person so that conversation, this is the world of vibratory response used in like a more business setting versus a table with a tuning fork or a didgeridoo or a singing bowl.
Right. Well, okay, so something I have done, you might I guess I've learned from you because I was with a group. I guess this would have happened in 24 when I did this a couple times with 2 different groups. There were 25, probably 30, 35 women in the room. And I just felt like, okay, we need to kick this meeting off. We already knew each other, but not well. I was the speaker, as a group. And I just said, all right, let's ground ourselves. So I had everyone, picture grounding and roots and all that. And I said, all right, now we're going to do and we're going to do it on 3 breaths. And so I just took a deep breath in and I said, my breath is going to be longer than yours, I promise. And we had the whole room going, and all in unison. And it was just magnificent. It was powerful. It was beautiful. It was really unifying.
Yeah. One of the things that I'll take from that story is that you already knew each other. And so, like, the world of taking those breaths together and getting in the moment is it can clear up any preconceived notions that you have about a person. Like, let me see this person as they are right now in this exact setting versus like, oh, that's so and so. I know her from the gym. She's always like scattered and stuff like that. Because there's certain settings where I'm scattered. There's certain settings where I'm super grounded and relaxed. And so it's beyond me knowing that. Like it's nice if a human being gives me the opportunity to just show up as I am, so that, you know, sometimes I might show up like, yeah, blah, 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 you know, like when you first had me talk and I just went for it. And other times you might say something, I'll be like, it's good to be here. And it's like, okay, I'm not talking anymore. People are always
Well,
amazed when I'm not talking.
and to be honest, before I started that session, I asked, not asked, I made sure I got there a half an hour early. I went into a separate room and I did some grounding myself so that I could lead, with my full true self and be grounded and so on and so forth. So I guess that's the real reason I wanted you here today, because I see what an authentic leader you are. I see your impact, your beautiful heart, and how you hold space for people. And I wanted to talk more about it, quite frankly, just selfishly, right? Because I think it's so
Yeah, yeah,
important. I think it's an incredibly important, it's become an incredibly important piece of my work as well. So, yeah, anyway, all that.
yeah. And on that story you're telling, like, you know, so as a vibrational therapist, like I know what tone, what consonants and vowels and stuff work on what parts of the body. And like is going to open up the heart. So it's like, so these people are going to all of a sudden feel safer and, you know, connected from the heart versus something like, is going to ground people. And so like, it's the kind of thing where, you know, an can be like down, like shoulders dropping, like, you know, or can like, so
Mm.
it's this interesting thing where when I'm working with groups or if I'm working, whether it's in yoga studios or if I was a consultant in India and I put in kombucha taproom over there. So I was working with people who I didn't even know their language, but like I could look at them, I could make a sound that we could recognize, I could touch my heart, you know, or I could like go like that. Like, so like it's the amount of communication we can do without actual language is amazing. And we do it all the time, you know, we'll go, you know, like, oh, that was, you know, like if someone does that, you're like, oh, I'm sorry, I scared you. Like, you know, what was going on there, you know, and like, oh, when you did this, you know, like, okay, let's reset, like, whew, you know, so it's, it's a language that seems very strange to use, but we start doing it at birth, at childhood. We make sounds that try and express to others, like, this is how I'm feeling. And then we make sounds back to people like, oh, I notice you're feeling this way and I'll give you some comfort, or, you know, other ways we express ourselves that aren't necessarily what we call healthy, but they're still expressions of self.
Thank you. So, all right. So we talked about some of the music. We talked about some of the healing. Take me to the tap room. Take me to, so
Yeah.
you started doing vibrational frequencies with the kombucha. You were home brewing, and then you got some bright idea. Hey, I can turn this into a business. So what
Well,
happened?
Well,
What?
my business partner is what happened. Whenever people are like, how'd you start a business? You know, as you can see, I'm like woohoo. I'm very woohoo, you know, and he's very like, I'll write papers and make documents happen. So he had his first child, and she was 1 day old, and I was holding her, and he said, hey, I can't work for the man, and I created this word maducha, which is the blend of our mead and our kombucha. And I said, we have a word that doesn't have a home. What if we start a business that makes these things so that we can do it? And I had been told earlier by one of my mentors, if I did not work with sound, whatever I did in my life would peter out. I'd get bored with it. I'd quit doing it. So I was doing all the sound infusion at home. I had displayed sound vibration to him with the mead brewing, and he had found that the mead tasted completely different with activating the yeast and keeping the
Wait, the
sugar in
mead?
balance.
The mead?
Mead is honey wine. Yep. So we also make honey wine. So 9,500-year-old fermentation process of making honey wine, about 3,000-year-old process of making kombucha. So we're really into like these traditional processes and keeping them alive. And so we started the business, and I got to a point where we were in every single Meijer store in Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, Indiana, Illinois, and another like 200, 250 stores in Michigan. And our bottles, we were the first company to do it. We have a separate vibrational ingredients listing, and then underneath it was physical ingredients. So you'd grab our bottle and it'd tell you like what vibrational patterns were put into it. Then underneath it would be like, you know, sugar, green tea, kombucha culture, beets, ginger, turmeric. And that was like my dream. It's like I just want to get the word that vibrational ingredients are very, very important. And we got in all those stores. We were about to go nationwide. I'm in a business meeting. I turn to this guy, I go, "Hey, what's my name?" And he goes, "Huh?" I'm like, "Not Sacred Springs, but what's my name?" And he goes, "I don't know." And I'm like, "We're done here. Goodbye." And I turn to my business partner. I'm like, "I just want the tap room was always our goal, because you would use back in the day when I brewed for 12 years before this, you'd come to my house, you'd have a drink with me, we'd talk about what we're drinking, we'd talk about life, we'd play some music, we'd cry, we'd laugh." And I was like, a tap room, after all the years of touring too, a bar is a bar, and it's loud and crazy, and you forget what happened there. And a coffee shop has got grinding machines and blenders going, and you get so amped up there that whatever you talk about, you might not actually have the energy to do. So we created this space where you can come in here. It's not amping you up. It's not knocking you out. It's just a drink. I mean, it's full of probiotics and enzymes and water. I get to do all my vibrational patterns into this liquid drink. And when you're drinking it, you're becoming more and more clarified as compared to caffeinated or drunk. And so we've had so many people and so many musicians who come through here like, I just feel so clean and clear when I come here. I've always said I wish there was a place for the #1 conversation indoors in Grand Rapids, and I feel like we could win that, because everything here is done with listening and respect and care, and there's not like all of a sudden a sound. There's not all of a sudden a grinder or something that interrupts all the energy. So
That's incredible. I want to go, okay, all right. So I started out my career in sales, and I can see the boardroom, I can see the players, I can see all of it. And then you turn and say, "What's my name?" Right? And
yeah,
what a moment. It's a defining, jaw-dropping moment.
yeah.
What authenticity and integrity you had to have had to challenge him and then also walk away.
Yeah, because it was in the long run, like sustainability is such a word in today's business world. But if you're not sustainable to your own heart and your own like self, your own authenticity, like no matter how low your carbon footprint is or any of that kind of stuff, like it's some point it's not sustainable. It's like it comes down to the core self of self. Like, am I being sustainable for myself? Am I doing exactly what I feel true to? And you know, and luckily I have a business partner who was right there with me, and you know, and we agreed upon it. You know, another story precursoring that was when we got into the Myers stores, and my business partner had gotten us in, and it was the first time I was going to a business meeting. And I walk in and I hug the woman, the CEO, who you know the business meeting's with, and she's like, "What?" She's like, "I have been in business for 35 years, and no one has ever hugged me." And then we're leaving, and she's like, "You better give me one of those hugs." And I give her a hug. And a couple months later, we pull out of all Myers stores. We just opened the tap room. We decide when we opened the tap room, we pulled out of all of our major, you know, distribution.
Distributors. Wow.
She walked in 2 weeks after we opened. She looked around and she goes, "Smart mother effers," you know, and she just was so happy for us, you know. And then Myers had a couple different business meetings that they had here. They had like their food scientists come out here and have their yearly meeting, business party and stuff like that. So
That's incredible.
it's a great thing, you know, when everything is like just authentic, no one's really getting hurt. They're all just, you know, we're all learning together.
That's an incredible story. And I didn't realize that you had I thought you pulled out of more distribution, but I didn't realize you even pulled out of the distribution you had.
Yeah, yeah, we pulled out of yeah, we called it return to the source. And so I was inspired by Lake Michigan. I crested a dune one time, and there was Lake Michigan in all its vast glory. And I was like, you can sit in Colorado and stare out your window and look at a mountain that's miles upon miles away and feel like you have a relationship with that mountain. But like Michigan, like you might be 10 feet from it. And not even, and so it was just a desire for people to come in here. And a lot of people come in here and our repeat business is our main business because once people walk in, they just want to come back because it's got a vibe about it.
That reminds me of something I heard Eckhart Tolle say. Someone asked him about being present. Again, this is years ago. Don't hold me to repeating what he said exactly. But basically, he said, well, when someone drinks, yes, they are getting out of their head, but their vibration is lower because they're drunk. And so when you're meditating, your vibration, you're present and your vibration goes up. Am I on track with that
No, I
at all?
mean, it makes sense. No, it makes sense. I like the whole pyramid viewpoint where like your energy is going to go up, but you don't want to like float away from the earth. So there's so I always tell people I'm a man that owns a business, not a businessman. So like the first thing, my base, my foundation is I'm a man. Now I own a business, so I want to get somewhere with that business. So I focus on what that can do. But so some people's foundation might be like, I'm a businessman, in which case, like every choice they make is around like
Is
how
on
the
top of
business
found.
can do
Yeah.
something. Whereas like I'm a man, and what I desire to offer to my community is being my authentic self. Because I think if people are their authentic selves, whatever they're offering to our community is going to be this beautiful thing that we all like to take part of. And so in the world of selfishness, which you used that word earlier, like I want to be entertained. I want to see something that I love. So like if people come in here like, man, you are doing exactly what you love to do. I'm like, show me your passion. Show me what you love to do. I want to walk into a business and feel whatever it is you love to do at that same core level.
I love that. I love that. And I feel that way about my business. I have many friends who are talking about slowing down, winding down, right? They're like, "Oh, I hate my job so much." And I can't say that. I love this work. And part of it's the transformation, right? Part of it, there's just so much goodness about it. So we just had a big technology glitch, and we've had to resituate and get back online and get a drink. And here we are to continue this conversation. Woohoo! Welcome back.
I had a great break.
Well, good, 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 good. I can't even tell you where we left off, but let's just jump into the next. I was thinking you have this business and obviously it's providing you with a life, right? So do you ever
Yeah,
worry about the external results, or do you just let things happen, or you have this business partner who's a little bit more left brain? So how are you handling results?
sure. So I definitely create a life for myself where it's not as based upon the financial results as the business as some business owners would. For me, my passion is working with sound and vibration.
Mhm.
I've been brewing kombucha for 20 years, so I love the fact that I get to do that, and I love my community. I love that I can just be here at a business where people can walk in and talk about whatever depth of things they want to talk about. I actually would say I give more financial stability to my workers than I do myself, which, I'm not going to say that's healthy, but but they're out here representing something that is a deep passion of mine. And so I think that their authentic self being taken care of is like a huge aspect of why they can feel safe to then show up as they need. So it's not your traditional business model where we started a business to make money. It's a business that was created to support myself, but not to get caught up into that financial aspect of it.
Right. It allows you to be.
Yeah. Yep. And if I need money, then I can do more of my practice with the sonic massage stuff, where I work one-on-one with people. We have sound experiences here at the tap room where we charge a ticketed price where 10 people can come in and lay down and get cozy. And I create sound for them and then come out over each person as an individual and put sound directly on them. So if the kombucha aspect of it is not, taking care of my financial needs, instead of asking the business to show up for me, I go out and show up for myself with the sound and creation of that.
And in full disclosure, me being the curious person that I am and a lover of energy, I have experienced the sound healing and it's pretty incredible. It is, how would I describe it? Soul awakening. It's it's transformative. It's well, because you do it, right? But I'm just telling
Yeah.
the listeners. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, some of the descriptions I've had is like a nervous system reset, a feeling of presence. So,
Mhm.
I mean, I'm working, like, I don't have a preconceived, like, I'm going to first start with this note on this part of the body. And like, I'm going to, like, I'm working with the body that's showing up as it is in real time. And so I like really my focus is presence. Like, how can, how can I be there for a person so they can see where they're actually at versus the story of where they want to be, or the story of like, like a lot of us have traumas that we've experienced, but they're over now, but our body has them trapped in there. So like, how can I use vibratory response to help the nervous system go, oh, I'm safe, and it's not me who's telling you you're safe. It's your own body that's telling you you're safe, or, oh, that's no longer happening, or, oh, this thing that I wish was happening, I realize now I don't really wish that was happening. That was something that I was told when I was a kid needs to happen in order for me to be considered, worthy or fulfilled or abundant. So definitely like the word abundant for me, as we're talking about business, my abundance is in connection with myself and my community. Some people, their abundance might be monetary. Sometimes people's abundance might be we're in 5,000 stores across the world, And for me, my abundance is the fact that I've stayed true to myself, created a tap room where I feel comfortable, and allowed space for people to come into it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. I remember the first time I worked with you, and I think I just intuitively said, I don't know, my aura needs to be smoothed out, like it feels off or jaggedy or something like that. And afterwards, do you recall that at all?
No.
I can't believe you don't remember every single session that you've ever done, right? So,
Or
and
maybe I do remember, but I want you to say it so you can hear
yeah,
it
there
yourself.
you go. There you go. You said to me, that was the weirdest session I've done. I said, why is that? You said, because I would hit you with a certain note and it would come back as a sharp or a flat. And it was like it was counteracting whatever is going on in anyway, it was impressive, whatever it was. And it was beautiful and really something. It was really something. So if anybody out
Yeah.
there ever wants to try it, I highly, highly recommend it. So there you go. Okay.
And in that world, let me just say one
Yeah,
thing on
yeah,
that.
please.
It's the same idea with like lighting for a photographer, or like if you are leading a group of people and this person responds to agitation and a challenge,
Hmm.
whereas this person responds to coddling. Like you see each thing as an individual thing, and no thing is right or wrong. It's just is what it is. And so, I know this is a podcast on leadership, so I just want to keep, getting back to those points of like when I say I listen, it also means like, I've got a small group of employees that work here, and I tell them, I'm like, if you have an emotional thing going on, call me. If you have a technological or financial issue, call my business partner, not me. Because
Fair
like
enough.
I don't know how to
Fair
fix
enough.
that. Yeah, I don't know how to fix that stuff, but I want to hear if you're having a tough moment at home and see if you need the day off, or if coming in and being around your community is going to be more helpful for you at that time.
Well, now that you just thank you for steering it back to leadership and in that vein, I'm curious your thoughts on because you bring so much into this tap room. Like we can overuse the word authenticity or use the word authenticity, but we're talking about connection, conversations, uh, being in alignment with people, being in alignment with ourselves. How do you think, well, you've seen it. How do people change or who are they when they are in alignment?
Are we talking all people? Or are we talking my workers? Like, what do you like? Just help
Take
me
your
because my
pick.
mind goes everywhere.
Take your pick.
Sure, sure. Well, I'll
What
talk
could it
about some
be like
things.
on a universal level? Like where could we go?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And that's the beautiful thing is that my workers are also my customers, and sometimes they might be my clients. Like they are all those things. And sometimes my customers are my clients, or I'm getting slammed, and they're like, "You want me to do dishes?" I'm like, "Heck yeah, I want you to do dishes." You know, so it is this thing where things just intermingle in that way. Um, but I think that the main thing that I see is that when people come in here, no matter who's sitting where, they feel really comfortable just opening up a conversation with that person. And I've watched people start off their conversation with like just a deep reveal on themselves to a complete stranger. And all of a sudden that stranger will be like, no way, that is exactly what I'm going through right now. And they both came in to grab like a quick drink to go. And 3 hours later, I'm like, all right, I'm locking the door. You know, love you guys. You can continue this conversation somewhere else. So I love that. With my workers, you know, like they're in front of people. So I'll tell them, like, hey, if someone says, how are you doing? And you're having a really sad day, like, don't lie and say, I'm good. Like, don't put on a fake smile just because you got the apron on or something like that. And they'll be like, I'm having a hard day. It's like really tough right now. And a lot of times the customer will be like, I'm having a hard day. It's tough. And like at the same time, they'll both be like, my mom. It's like, wait, what? And so it's this beautiful thing where when you don't think there's a specific way that you have to show up as a person who's representing a business, and like what I basically encourage is like be your authentic self. You know what I mean? If you don't feel like talking to someone, don't talk to them. You
Mm.
know, and all of a sudden that person who came in to talk to my worker starts talking to someone else in the tap room, and we realize they've got that deeper connection right now. Or like if you feel like you really want to talk to someone, and even though there's a bunch of like cans that need to be made or there's some stuff that needs to be cleaned, take that moment and talk to that person. And like it's so soul enlivening that all of a sudden like the job that they had to do, which is going to be annoying to them, is kind of done in a different way. And so I mean, like I can honestly tell when one of my workers has had a great day because they clean the same every single time, but like the place feels a different type of clean. Like
Mm.
we'll talk about that with people, you know, like, hey, like yeah, I wasn't cleaning because I had to. I was cleaning because I was just so like excited about this moment that I had here at the tap room. Um, and that's something that I think is really important. You know, you met me at the health food store, and
Yeah.
there's times where I put my hand over the apron and be like, okay, this is me talking to you as Geoff, not
Yeah.
as the guy working for this place. And I can give you an answer that's like, look, this is an outlandish answer coming from a person working at a retail store.
Mm.
But you know, and then I'd take my hand back off. I'm like, and if you need help with sleeping, there's these products right over here. You know what I mean? But it's like you obviously need help with sleeping because of the amount of stress from this situation in your life, but I don't have a product that is going to help with that. But I don't want to sit here and like just inauthentically guide you towards something that is able to be offered at my business, like my true, you know, and
Mhm.
the place that we're renting this place because it's a guy who I knew from high school. We didn't have to open one book. He was like, I've known you since high school. And his main goal is he wanted something that no one else has to offer. I'm like, you found it, man. Like no one else is offering sound-infused kombucha with singing bowls and tuning forks and stuff. And we have a great relationship that he trusts me every time I want to make a modification to the place. He's like, that seems like the craziest idea, but go for it. And he comes in, he's like, oh, you pulled it off. And so it's
Nice.
that that relationship of trust that we came from that allowed the business world to take on a whole new life.
So a minute ago, you said when someone comes, when an employee comes in and they're having a hard day, to be okay with expressing that, right? So
Mhm.
what happens if someone comes in, because I can see where it would throw off the energy of the room if they come in and they're angry about something and they are throwing that energy around. I can't imagine that's advice you're giving to other business owners, like, hey, let your people be jerks.
No, but maybe create a space. Maybe, there's the break rooms and stuff like that, like literally a break room where people go and break
I
stuff
went,
nowadays.
yes, I've gone.
Yeah, like what's it like to create a space at your business where, like, hey, we've got the blackout soundproof closet over there where you can go and just let out a primal scream if you need, or like, hey, I see you need to release something, why don't you come in my office and you can just like pound my desk a couple times and stuff like that. But the main thing that I want to offer at my tap room is authenticity. So if the person's authentic energy is anger, you also notice, like, I'm going to get a little deep here and stuff like that. In Chinese
Go for it.
medicine, anger works with the liver, and the liver is the wood element. So what does wood create when you have a fire? Like more fire. So like if this person can fully express their anger, the passion of the business sometimes has a place to come out too. But the other safe place that I create is like if this person's like, hey, freaking out today, I'm totally angry, I'll be like, hey, I'll be right in. And I come in and I give them a chance to go on a break, go for a walk, go let it out. Or, I've got healing tools that I work with that not every single boss is going to have, where I could maybe like play some instruments on them that help like integrate that anger and balance it out and such. But I have long-standing relationships with all of my workers because of the fact that I do allow them that space to be authentic. And my customers, like I said, about 82% of them are repeat customers. They know they could come in here and someone could be like, ah, they might know by the music that's playing, like, oh, so and so is having a tough day, and
Yeah.
they might come in and be meek and just roll out, or they might come in and be like, crappy day, huh? And my worker like, yup. And just by being allowed to say yup to the fact they're having a hard day, it starts the integration of what's going on so that they can find themselves back in a place of balance. So,
The word that comes to mind is honoring, right? They're honoring the
yeah,
moment. You're honoring their moment, the space. It's just
yep.
it sounds like you've created a really beautiful environment.
And if you talk to my business partner, he's like, I don't know what you're doing. I don't want to know, like you have to allow. So if you're like, managing people and there's like seven different managers, you kind of also have to say to like the people like, hey, when it's me, this is how you get to show up. But when it's him, like you got to show up how he works. You know what I mean? And then you can
Mhm.
decide, because when we've gone through that, where sometimes some people's like, you treat me like this and he treats me like that. I'm like, you were told in the very beginning that's how it's going to be. And they'll go, oh yeah, and then a lot of time they'll see we're both males who run this place, so a lot of times daddy issues can come up. Like we're talking about leadership, like like someone has an issue with their father, they might have an issue with the way we lead. You know what I mean? And it's like, and they're laughing, they're crazy, they're like, how is this happening? Like I'm just at my job, and I'm like, yeah, but you're so cared for here that like whatever thing is in there that's making you feel uneasy, it does have the opportunity to come up, and um, I've always been a firm believer in, you know, sick days or days to take off to prevent getting sicker. It's like, I'm not sick yet, but I can tell something really tough is coming up. I'm going to take this day off so I can be at work the next 4 days instead of like forcing someone, and people are shocked all the time. Like when they have to take days off here, they're like, so what do I need to do? I'm like, nothing. You just need to tell me you need the day off and we'll cover it. And I think that creates a loop of safety that are not a lot of businesses, like people are scared to take the day off, scared to take the afternoon off because they're scared that they'd lose their job, and their financial stability they're getting from their job is very important in their lives. So I try and let people know, like, hey, if you're open with me and communicate clearly, then and I'll let you know, like, hey, I'll come in and cover it, or hey, put a sign up on the door that says we're closed today. I don't feel like working either. So it's very shocking to people, the
Well, it's one of the tenets of leadership, the foundation piece is trust, and that's what you're building.
yeah.
The other thing, when you were talking about synchronicities of the same kind of clients coming into the tap room, or clients with the same topic on the top of their mind, I find the same thing with coaching clients. Like I will be going through something and someone who is like a mini me shows up and starts talking about it. I'm just cracking up because it's like, oh, that's how that sounds, right? It happens over and over and over again. So it's, I think we have philosophically, I feel like we have a ton of opportunities to work on ourselves and to heal. And we just have to be, well, we don't have to be, but I feel like we should be aware of those moments and able to reflect on those moments and dive into the gift that they offer versus passing it all by and thinking that we're just supposed to get from point A to point Z and that's life, right?
Yeah. And there's a balance of like relating to the person versus letting them express themselves, and not, like there's a point of like, I want to share some stories about how I can relate to them, but there's also a point where like, I just need to be quiet and let them express themselves. And so that's like a really fine line in leadership too, of like someone sharing something they're going through. You could just topple right over and be like, me too. In fact, back in 1987, but or you could be like so what's going on there? Do you think, you know what I mean? And like, and in your heart that you've got a great short story to share, but like, it's time to let that person share their story, not time to take their story away from them and put your story on top of their story and such. So
That's a
that's a
great
spot as
point.
a father here. Yeah, and so like if your whole thing is putting the care of that person first, you'll kind of be able to read those moments. When do I share? When do I listen?
Mm-hmm. Great point. So as we're kind of wrapping up, I want to know if there's anything else as far as a message you'd love to get across, but specifically the message I'd like to hear from you is any last thoughts about leadership and authenticity. I mean, we've talked about that a lot in this conversation, but you're just a bank of wisdom.
Yeah, it's this great Aesop's fable where this frog comes out of the pond and says like, I'm going to heal everyone, and the frog's all messed up and weird looking, and it says, "Physician, heal thyself." So like, I think if you want to be a great leader, like see where your strengths and like get to know yourself, and if you know yourself, then you're going to be able to bring the most out of other people who you're leading. But if you don't take an opportunity to get to know yourself, whether that's through meditation, reading a book, working with a counselor, my business partner likes to read tons of business books. I like to read tons of books on Taoism and Taoism and stuff like that. So you getting to know yourself is the best way that you can offer leadership to other people. And I also just have to go back to like, listen, listen, listen. If you're in a room with 7 people, look at all of them and acknowledge that all 7 of them are different people, and that your goal is to get to a finalized product or project, but it doesn't mean you're all going to take the same route to get there. And be open and supportive to what those people are going to show up like.
That's terrific advice. And I now have a follow-up question. Um,
Yeah.
regarding what you just said about know thyself. So I believe that's the foundation of leadership. So we haven't talked about this, and yes, it's like right on brand for what I'm talking about. However, I don't know that I can explain it as well as you can right now. So if someone says to you, you say, know thyself, and they say, dude, I know myself. I know who I am. I know what I like to eat for dinner. I know how much I sleep, right? They believe they know themselves. How would you respond to that?
And for lack of a better term, I'm going to use the word weakness, but like, know yourself when you're uncomfortable. know yourself when you're feeling weak. Like know the uncomfortable, hardship, scary parts of yourself if you truly want to know yourself. Not just like the good parts. The good parts, they just come out naturally. But like take some time to feel those uncomfortable bits. Take some time to do something you don't normally do. So for me, right now I'm going to the gym. I will think all day long. I'll feel my heart. I'll play music, but like, all right, lift weights, get on a treadmill, like sweat till you can drop. And like, this is horrible. And I see other people out there like they're loving it. You know what I mean? But if I'm like, hey, tell me about your childhood, they're like, heck no, I'm not gonna. I'm gonna lift these 500-pound weights right here. So know where your uncomfortable bits are. People call it shadow work. Like they and the shadows get more intense if you bring the light to them because there can't be a shadow without light. But if you just keep going through it, you're going to have a deep understanding of yourself, which then will give you an understanding of other people in a better way too.
All right, follow up to the follow up. What does that
Yeah.
mean?
What does it mean to go into the shadowy parts or,
Nope. So once you know yourself better, then you are able to know others better. But how does knowing yourself better, what's the bridge, I guess, is really the word I'm looking for.
sure, like if you're a complete circle, then there's no little corners that things are hiding in. So if you know yourself, there's a full availability of yourself to show up. And also, you'll realize when you're doing work on knowing yourself that every time you get an answer, you get seven more questions. And so it makes a more curious mind and heart for those that you're working with
Mhm.
instead of being like, no, you're so and so, and this is what you do. It makes you go, so I always thought you were in so and so. This is how you do things. Like, what do you think about yourself?
So here's my pretend final question.
Yeah.
Who does work on you? How do you get the same vibrational healing, or can you administer to yourself?
Sure. I work with a somatic therapist. I work with a therapist that does EMDR,
Hmm.
and I personally I do plant ceremony medicine. So I go and work with medicine that people have used for thousands of years to go back, and it basically takes you back to a vibratory pattern. I'm no longer Geoff Lamden, the human being who's 47 years old sitting here. I'm like the beginning of the universe and like what the heck's going to happen next kind of thing. So I think that everyone will find the thing that works for them. One of my favorite things I ever did is I worked with horses because I'm a very logical person, and horses have the largest heart of any land animal, and they got their big eyes, and I would work with them and I would emotionally discover things about myself. And you don't lead a horse, you walk with a horse. So if you want to learn about leadership, working with something like that, you know. As for the world of sound and vibration, water is my teacher. So I listen to it rain, I listen to it snow, I go to the lake, I go to a babbling brook, I go to a river, I just listen to the faucet drip water into a cup that I'm going to drink from. So, little esoteric answer, but it's my truth. I asked water to be my teacher about 13 years ago, and you know, my whole thing is working with water as I make a vibratory drink here and such.
I love it.
And
I love
water,
it.
water is full of humility. It goes to the lowest point and it offers itself to anyone who shows up.
And who was I've seen the study you were talking about where the water patterns based on words that were said, the water
Yep.
patterns changed. Just as a reference, can anyone look that up? What
Yeah.
would they look
Yeah.
up?
Dr. Emoto, Emoto, Dr. Emoto. He's from Japan. He's passed away since, but he's got tons of work out there. And the other thing you can look into is cymatics, which is people use sand or salt and they vibrate it at different frequencies and show the patterns that it creates.
That's amazing. Wow. I love this. This is
Yeah.
really cool. And I love your take on it's not your take on leadership, but it's you in leadership. And that's been a thread throughout your entire life, whether it's in music or sound healing or business owning, right? You've shown up as yourself, and pretty special. Pretty special.
Yeah. So, one last bit of advice for me is like sometimes the best answer is another question. Someone feels like I feel like I can't do that. Instead of being like you can, be like, how is it you feel that you can't do that? Like sometimes a question is a great answer to draw something out of someone.
I'm telling you should be a coach. Well, the only thing that's missing right now is that you're on the screen and you give great hugs. And so I'm sending you a virtual hug right now. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
It was a pleasure chatting with you, and go have an awesome day.
Yeah. Thanks, Heidi. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, take care.
Yep. Cheers.
Hi there. I just finished my conversation with Geoff Lamden and I loved it. Very often I'm talking to leaders or I'm talking about subjects that I'm interested in. So it's not as often that I get an opportunity to talk about a subject that I love with a leader about leadership. So that was extra cool. I just have a couple takeaways from our conversation that I want to share. One is vibratory response. I love the idea that he's so in tune that he can touch a person's body with a tuning fork, let's say, and get a vibratory response, or even say a word, say a sound, and have them respond. So I think that's pretty cool. Vibratory patterns, and how, like we're all in a boardroom together and everyone's got a vibe, and how those vibes mesh together and give you kind of an aura in the room. As a leader, I think it's important to pay attention to those vibes that you're picking up, right? It's like, that term, you can cut the tension with a knife. Well, the tension is palpable. And so if your team isn't gelling, what is it that they need to get into a different vibrational pattern? Let's see. I like this idea of entrainment where the clocks were ticking together. I did not know that. Being on the same cycle. Interesting. I've heard that concept before, but not with sound. So that was cool. Let's see. I also love the idea that he has been following his passion for all these years. I understand the blessing of being in a career that I have such passion for. So all that to say, I hope that if not in your job in the day-to-day, that you have something in a hobby or something in your life that gives you the same kind of passion and zest for life, right? And then the last word, of course, in leadership is intention. And the reason I bring up this word is because after we were finished with the podcast, he said to me, I didn't want to come in and just talk about the tap room because it would be missing out on all the intention that I had set into place or into motion beforehand. When you think about it, his entire career has been sound and authenticity. And those two things together, he grew and grew and grew and kept following that path or that thread into this really cool space that he has now called the tap room. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Maybe learned a couple things. Maybe it opened up your mind, expanded your thinking. All that to say, have a great rest of the day. Thanks. You have been listening to the Charging Up Leadership podcast, and I am your host, Heidi Fry, charged up, plugged in, and sending you energy, light, and love. Find me at HeidiFry.com. And don't forget to check out my book, The Light Switch, available on Amazon, in your local bookstores, or on my website. The Charging Up Leadership podcast is created, hosted, and produced by Heidi Fry. Theme music is by Yevchen Anoychenko from Pixabay.